Welcome to another episode of exploring the vintage NFT space with Zero G. I'm excited to have with us today CryptoPop, one of the OG Curio Cards artists, also known as Lewis. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much for the invite. Really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, really looking forward to talking to you. You've got, you've got a breadth of history and got so much to talk about. So, since I've got you here, why don't we just start off with like what got you interested in crypto and what pushed you over the edge to actually make your first purchase?
Sure. Yeah. So I've actually been a startup founder for as long as I can remember, like from my mid-20s onwards. And I always kind of tried to look for interesting new technologies, right? So like in the mid 2000s, that was things like social networks. In the 2010s, it was kind of, e-commerce, at least here in the Philippines, it became like e-commerce. And then eventually I did kind of find Bitcoin in 2014. And back then we just called it the Bitcoin industry because really, I mean, Ethereum didn't even exist in 2014 yet. So, and Vitalik was still kind of writing for Bitcoin magazine. So my experience kind of comes from the very early days of Bitcoin in Southeast Asia, where, it was just Saturday morning meetups in a food market, just a bunch of like libertarian cypherpunks, like trading stories about, kind of back then, the stuff that, it was all about like the jargon that you could throw around, right? So everyone would talk about things like 51% attacks and Byzantine general problems and stuff like that. That was the stuff that kind of made your Saturday morning an exhilarating conversation. So I joined one of the very early companies that kind of was focusing on Bitcoin trading here in the Philippines. That was in 2014. I really kind of dove into the rabbit hole of, kind of the white paper, everything I could read or watch on YouTube. So I spent like hours and hours watching Andreas Antonopoulos, kind of listening to the CEO of Zappo. He was one of my kind of heroes earlier on. And just kind of like trying to absorb everything I could. And to me, so I guess I always kind of approached it very differently from your average kind of North American or European, because the Philippines is not exactly a stable economy. So I was born in the early 1980s, and around the time that I was born, the Philippine peso was trading 7 to 1 US dollar, right? So 7 pesos to 1 US dollar. If you look at the exchange rate right now, it's 55 pesos to 1 US dollar. So just in the course of my young life, we've lost nearly 85, 90%, maybe more than that, actually 95% of our power against the dollar. So it's not a great kind of situation for you to be doing anything under. I mean, like, saving money is a joke. Inheriting money is a joke because, like, every decade or so your money has halved in value, even if we're just talking against the USD, right? I mean, if
Which
you
is
look at it
also
against
dropping.
Yes, exactly, right? So you've got two things that are dropping simultaneously, and you're dropping faster. So it's ridiculous to kind of the things that you teach in financial management classes, where you got to save that money for a rainy day. Like, why though? It doesn't make sense, right? Because the best thing you can do right now is just turn your peso into something more kind of more physical, just to kind of try to keep some of that value, which again is very impractical if you don't have a lot of it, and if you want to save for, like, say, a health crisis. Like, you can't really just keep turning all of your money into stuff. So I'd been looking for solutions for a while. The Bitcoin white paper came along, and it crystallized some of my thinking about what is possible with technology. And, kind of, I really buy into that idea that Bitcoin is the missing internet money solution that the original designers of the World Wide Web did not have access to. The tech that we needed in order for Bitcoin to exist didn't exist when Tim Berners-Lee was kind of crafting the World Wide Web. So, like, it was what was missing. And I do really believe that, kind of, to a certain extent, Bitcoin does allow for a store of value alternative for people who don't have access to great options. So here in the Philippines and in many other emerging economies, you're constantly under threat of, just inflation that is sometimes it's kind of swept under the rug, so you don't even know that it's happening. And you're, and also, and I don't want to turn this conversation political, but our administration, our governments are not particularly, let's just say I would be foolish to completely trust our government regarding the future of our economy.
Yeah,
So I'll just say that, right? And I'm not
well,
going to go any further into that.
I guess I would kind of clarify that on a it's not just in the Philippines, but on a global scale too. We have repeatedly shown that keeping your, like, inflation and everything aside, keeping your quote unquote money in depository accounts is not safe. We had just this last year, we had the Canadian protests where the government unilaterally froze assets that were in accounts without charging people with a crime. And we have the Cyprus bank bail-ins as an example of essentially asset forfeiture of depositors through no fault of their own. So
Right.
and another point and I'll kick it back to you, is I would just say that converting your money into stuff to prevent it eroding away is also impractical. Like, if you're doing
Yeah.
gold or something, because having stuff, and then if you need to travel on a moment's notice, good luck getting
Exactly.
through an airport with a roll of gold coins, right? you know
Right. Not that I've ever tried, but I imagine that would be a tremendous hassle. Oh my God. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's the Bitcoin was the solution that I think a lot of people were looking for. Maybe it was a solution that people weren't necessarily ready for yet, kind of from a cognitive standpoint, because, I'm not going to lie, the learning curve on this stuff is fairly massive, especially if you're the kind of person who's used to, like, using the same password for all of your email accounts, and then probably the same password for all of your online banking accounts. Like,
Yeah.
you're not ready for this stuff, right? And you need to undergo a lot of, like, just, either, learning from others, or, like, straight up to take some courses or something with, in terms of, like, cybersecurity or something. Like, the average person on the internet is not ready for the amount of responsibility that Bitcoin can bestow on kind of these self-custody kind of holdings. But so that's kind of why I got so interested in this stuff, right? I come from a pretty deep programming background. I've been a programmer for about 18 years now, and I know how much work it takes to educate people just to use new interfaces, right? So a lot of my work now on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, is just around crypto education, right? And kind of like try to tie it into things like, so the inflation rate here in the Philippines right now is about 6.2%. So not as high as the reported US one, but still significant. But I think maybe what's interesting about that 6.2% is that it's been about 6.2% for as long as I can remember. So it's just kind of this ridiculous thing that keeps chipping away at your buying power.
And it's
Um,
compounding too, which people
yeah.
forget. It's insidious.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So it comes out to about, you lose about half of your buying power every decade on average, which, I mean, I don't think that is a situation that anyone should be okay with, but we've kind of accepted it as being something as natural as gravity. And that's wrong, right? That's gotta be wrong. There's something wrong with that line of thinking. So yeah, so I've dedicated as much of my time as I can to trying to teach people how to get into crypto safely. And I've been very, very practical about the solutions, right? I don't always say, kind of do the paper wallet route, buy your first ledger or Trezor or whatever, right? I don't start with that because, like, for most people, it's such a high bar of comprehension that it'll turn them off entirely, right? And I'm not as concerned with teaching the people who are high net worth. I'm more concerned with teaching the people who are kind of from the lower income brackets, because they're the ones that get destroyed every time, say the price of flour or the price of rice goes up,
For
or the
them
price of
losing it,
gas, right?
yeah, for them losing $1,000 is a lot bigger deal, you know?
Yes, exactly. Right. So kind of that's my area of concern. And that area of concern is not going to be the kind of customer that is going to be able to spend $100 on a Trezor, right? So you need to be able to kind of ease them in to easier solutions. So kind of that was like the whole point of my Bitcoin career, or I guess now it's my crypto career, kind of try to make that stuff more accessible, right? So either through better tooling, slightly more straightforward solutions, or whatever it was, right? So I got very deeply into the crypto exchange business here in the Philippines as a result of that.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, and that's an area. I remember when I first got in, I first started playing around with Bitcoin, in 2012. The thing that I like made me doubt it catching on was the interface, and
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine normal people like having to copy and paste the strings exactly without missing a character. You know what I mean? It was just super
Yeah, yeah,
clunky. But so yeah, I
yeah.
totally see the need for and we still have a need to improve these interfaces and make it more user friendly. But I mean, we're
Yeah.
definitely making improvements.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we're light years ahead of so my first Bitcoin wallet was like mycelium, right? It was
Yeah.
just like yeah, that one's a hard one. That one's a hard one. And I mean, and even before that, people were just using the Bitcoin reference wallet, for God's sake. And these are like really difficult things to get into. At least now we're kind of a little bit more, at least desktop interfaces are nicer, all of that stuff. But like ultimately, kind of taking care of your seed phrase is a very, very difficult kind of ask for people
Mhm.
who don't know yet whether or not this stuff is for them.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Especially people who dip their toe in the water and then they can forget that, if they keep adding to it and they kind of don't keep track of how much they've been spending,
Right.
exactly.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. I mean, that's cool to be involved in the industry. I've never had a job like directly tying in there, so that must be rewarding to have had your hand in the
I mean, it's
in it.
it's rewarding, and then you are also reminded that the government is not your friend, the banks are not your friends. Kind
Mhm,
of constantly, you're constantly
mhm,
reminded. So, in the early days here in the Philippines, maybe the first 3 years of my career, we were constantly doing shell games with banks, right, just to kind of
mhm,
keep at least one or two bank accounts open,
mhm,
because at the time there was no real regulation about crypto. So it was more like it was all up to the bank's own discretion how they wanted to handle these types of accounts. And the ones that decided that crypto trading or Bitcoin trading was a black market activity, they just kind of shut you down immediately as soon as they kind of noticed that you were doing something weird, right? Like even if it was just trading amongst peers. So we had to that was a constant worry. And then when legislation came in, we were one of the first countries to write a licensing framework for crypto exchange in early 2017. What happened was that kind of they modeled it after money transmission. So like very quickly, all of those crypto exchange businesses that kind of before that were kind of just trading with customers directly, they started having to implement all of these very strict KYC and anti-money laundering rules into their interfaces, right? And
mhm.
if for a company that is not prepared to do that, that's actually a very expensive kind of procedure, because you have to do things like, for example, and this is weird because we're in the Philippines, right? We have to do sanction screening, and we have to use the databases of the US Department of Justice, not our own. So like I have to look up names of people, like kind of like, and that list is I mean it's not exactly public, but kind of the DOJ does kind of have an updated list of all of these hot names that you're not supposed to transact with, right? So like if your name happens to be Edward Snowden, for example, or Julian Assange, or whatever those things are. But like, what are the chances that a Filipino crypto exchange would ever encounter any of these people? I don't know. But you have to, under the law, you have to screen against those lists. So it was kind of like these kind of very awkward kind of asks that just added so much cost to it. And it kind of, again, it reminds you how, the government, especially when you're in a country like the Philippines that has a lot of international relations to worry about, we are, they're not necessarily the friends of innovation. They're not going to bend over backwards to help innovators, kind of do their thing. No one is going to work hard to lighten the load when it comes to things like know your customer policies or anti-money laundering or whatever these other kind of letters are, right? So they will they'll just kind of slap them on, and yeah, it does make it very, very challenging to run these types of businesses. The amounts of stuff the amounts of paperwork that you generate kind of almost makes the speed or efficiency of blockchain transactions almost redundant because it offsets it, because like you also for every granular blockchain transaction that you execute, you have to like generate a pile of paperwork. It's kind of like, okay, wow, that's it's like one step forward, two steps back kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah, let me guess, you probably also have to generate paper copies of that too, right?
Yeah, to a certain extent, you have to have paper copies. So like half of our office space needed to, we had like filing cabinets. I mean, filing cabinets, come on, really? It's like 2022.
Yeah,
But
I know,
it
right?
is what it is. Yeah, yep.
That's funny. Yeah, that's the last thing I would have anticipated or it's the last thing you would think when you're talking about crypto exchanges is like generating, just spitting out tons and tons of printouts, but
Yeah.
hey, it is what it is. I mean, so, well, at least you were able to kind of like eventually work around that and stay legal without getting shut down. I mean, I know some countries took a much different approach.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I think the trade-off was pretty apparent, right? It was either we comply or we shut down. And I think to us, the mission of making crypto more accessible to our, kind of to our country was a higher value target than maybe, kind of the requirements on us to comply with the government. It was just more important. So it was okay. Like we did it, and we continue to, do it. So,
So
it is what it is.
So how successful has that message been that you've really seen in terms of offering crypto as basically a haven from your national currency? Have people adopted that? Is that like, do people resonate with that?
It tends to happen in waves. And I think adoption tends to always happen in waves. And I guess we've always known that. But yeah, even the way that, even though my message has not changed over the last, 7-8 years, whatever, the adoption has still happened in waves. And kind of very, very recently, this year, it was primarily because kind of we had down markets across the world, right? So it wasn't just crypto, it was stock market, every stock exchange in the world, and then our own fiat currencies were kind of experiencing record inflation. So there are moments when these messages hit better, and it's because there are signals externally that are making your message stronger, right? So in this case, it's because buying power is, dropping through the floor. So stuff like that makes the message resonate with a whole new generation of people. Like maybe people who didn't really care about crypto until they realized that gas was now twice its price from before the lockdown, kind of that, then you realize, oh, holy crap, there's something very wrong with this, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so there you go, right? So it does happen in waves, I've found. And yeah, so we're experiencing one of those waves this year. We did a lot also in 2021, but that was kind of more because of Axie Infinity and the play to earn wave. because that was really, really massive here in the Philippines.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that, and then we can kind of circle back to your history, your
Sure.
art
Yeah,
career,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So the Philippines is a fairly young country, right? We're kind of leaning towards, the a population of below 30s. So
Mhm.
kind of very kind of young population. We were all stuck at home during the very lengthy lockdown. The lockdown here lasted a year and a half. And this was right around the time that Axie Infinity, the play to earn game, became kind of commercially viable. And so basically you had a whole bunch of kids doing nothing at home, and they were looking for some way to generate a little bit of extra income because unemployment was through the roof. And they discovered Axie Infinity, and it was real for them, for a while. There were at least 7 to 8 consecutive months where earning from Axie Infinity exceeded earning from minimum wage here in the Philippines. Sometimes by a large margin. It was like sometimes it was double the national minimum wage. And because of that, there was more and more people who kind of tried to get into it. And because of that, all of those people had to learn how to create a crypto wallet, right? And many of them started with MetaMask, but down the road many of them started with Ronin wallet, which is even weirder. Like most, I bet you most North Americans don't even know what Ronin wallet is, but Ronin wallet is kind of the native wallet of the Axie Infinity ecosystem. It's a
Okay, I
layer
didn't know.
two block. Yeah. It's a layer 2 blockchain. It's kind of like Polygon, except
Okay.
very, very specific to the Axie Infinity kind of world. And so you imagine that, right? There's about 1.5 million Filipinos whose first touch crypto wallet is Ronin. It's not Binance, it's not Coinbase, it's not even one of the licensed exchanges here in the Philippines. It's a freaking layer 2 wallet for a play to earn game. But it is just as legitimate a crypto wallet as any other, because from there you can bridge your funds back into the Ethereum layer 1 and then exchange it into whatever Philippine peso or whatever other fiat you want. So kind of these kids started their lives at layer 2, and then very quickly discovered how difficult it was to actually exchange that money into pesos that they could actually use to pay for groceries or utility bills or stuff like that. And so kind of part of our job became just educating them on how to do that safely, right? How not to get hacked, how not to get scammed, like what are the things that you need to kind of watch out for. And that became kind of a very, very important part of our kind of daily activities, just kind of educating people who had never done any of this stuff before.
That's
But that's always
fascinating.
what I've wanted. That's always what
Yeah.
I've wanted with crypto. Like I just want to be able to bring more people into it safely.
And even if this fad, I think has kind of died down a little bit now,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
to me, what's exciting about that is even if, so I don't know if it's financially viable anymore, but and even if it's not, we have all these young people where they've already been on, they already know how this stuff works. So
Yeah.
in the future, it's going to be that much easier whenever they do decide to, if they want to pick up Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it
Yeah.
is, they already
Yeah.
kind of know the ropes.
Yeah. It's a gateway.
Mhm.
All we need are more gateways. NFTs were the same, right? They were a gateway for a whole bunch of kind of mainstream users. That's what we need more of, because the thing is, there's not enough people who care about being, kind of not beholden to their sovereign currency, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's a very specific class of person who kind of got into Bitcoin because they were either libertarian or they like whatever the kind of socioeconomic political kind of position was that got them into it. That's a very specific type of person. What we need are more mainstream use cases, and NFTs were one of them. Play to earn is another. There's a whole bunch of smaller ones also. I've found that a lot of our kids who kind of got into play to earn first are now kind of exploring DeFi. Kind of the little money that they earned from the play to earn thing, like they're putting it into things like compound or whatever, like yield farms and things like that. So they're starting to experiment with these other solutions that are out there. Now, obviously, not all of those solutions are rock solid yet. So again, you have to go back into that educational kind of angle where you go, well, make sure you understand what you're doing first, because all of this stuff is still kind of deeply experimental. And just because they've been around longer than you have doesn't mean that they've been around very long. So kind of that's usually kind of what we try to say.
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of great examples of that. I mean, even this last year, we had like Celsius implode. We had Axie get rooked for like what, $500 million.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep. Don't forget Luna.
Yeah. Oh, Luna. Geez.
So, I mean, everyone learned a small lesson with that one. Apparently, it does not matter how big the backers are, the investors. It doesn't matter how many people have told you that this shit is good. Sometimes it's still not good, right? It doesn't matter how big the names are that are supporting this project. Sometimes it's still just not good, and it's unfortunate. But kind of everyone learned a pretty harsh lesson with the Luna crash, and I think we're still kind of seeing some of the impact of that downstream, because like I think you can kind of argue that Celsius, Three Arrows, kind of all of these other kind of maybe smaller ones down the road are what we'll kind of read about, but quite a lot of people had exposure to Terra. And yeah, it seems like we're still seeing kind of the effects of that downstream.
Yeah, I know Sam of FTX went on the record and said shortly after that there were because he's such a highly connected person, and he had talked to so many people, he had said he wouldn't name names, but he said that there were a significant quantity of high value exchanges that were basically illiquid,
Right.
insolvent, at the time. So
yeah.
it'll take a while to see how this plays out. But yeah, I do imagine there's a lot of people that were taking inordinate risks and not being transparent about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess one of the things they were also trying to avoid was kind of a bank run, right? So everyone's kind of trying to keep silent about it, because any amount of uncertainty from the user base will trigger the exact thing that they are trying to avoid, which is like, you don't want everyone withdrawing their funds at the same time. So that's why they're being very, very quiet, right? And like it usually takes a lot of pressure before someone as big as Celsius just finally admits that, we're insolvent or whatever. So yeah, I am sure that the story is not yet over. I'm just hoping that maybe the impact will be less as things go on. I mean, just this week, I've had like a numerous amount of these are just straight up hacks, right? With the Nomad Bridge and Solana wallets and stuff like that. It's like, geez, man, this is just 1 week, and there's like 2 hacks going on concurrently that we're kind of having to write about and explain and stuff. It's just.
I was just reading about the Solana wallet thing, and it looks like what was it, Slope? They were using like a logging or a telemetry package that was sending the seed phrase unencrypted. So geez.
I mean, geez, right?
Yeah.
I mean, wow. That sounds like a security risk. Oh boy. Yeah. So I don't know much about the Solana ecosystem, but I kind of dove in earlier this week when I was reading about the kind of the first news about the hack, because it seemed like it was still ongoing at the time. But yeah, it seems to have been restricted to, or it originated from Slope. And I don't know. So originally the Solana Labs CEO was saying that it was a iOS variant that was kind of, seemed to be like had that security hole. But it seems like it's actually a little bit more than that. It's not just, I think maybe the iOS thing was just a coincidence. I think it is from Slope itself.
Yeah, that's what I read earlier today. I read that they had determined it was Slope itself, that the way they were integrating logging or telemetry. I mean, it's kind of it's scandalous, I mean.
Yes. Oh yeah. It is scandalous. But thank God the amount of stuff that they were able to run away with is not massive yet, right? It's not hundreds of millions of dollars. But I mean, my heart goes out to anyone who was affected by that for
Yeah.
sure. That is a bad deal.
Yeah, through no fault of their own. Yeah, exactly. I feel
Yeah.
bad for the people
Yeah.
that got rooked from that.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Well, let's take a slight detour and let's talk about how you got involved in art.
Okay, sure. So I've been an art major and I've loved comic books all my life. So I do have a degree from an art school here in the Philippines. So that's what I kind of wanted to do with my life. I thought, at least, when I was kind of an undergraduate. But then the internet kind of happened in a big way here in the Philippines. So this is like late 90s. And I realized that actually, I think I kind of want to get into this internet thing more. So I taught myself at the time, your only choices were really ASP and PHP, and those are funny acronyms for people who have been around a long time on the internet. So I taught myself PHP, kind of carved out a freelance career as an early example of a website designer developer, right? So that was like my early 20s. I was just kind of like building corporate websites and stuff like that, and it was not bad. It was good money, I guess. So I never actually did much with the art kind of degree. I did it mostly. I had a very strong background, but like I never really turned it into a career. It was
Mhm.
mostly many years later. So at this point, I'd learned a whole bunch of different programming languages. At the very end of my career, I was more of a Ruby
Mhm.
and JavaScript developer. Um, and it was not until maybe my third year in crypto that I started to kind of get an itch to do something creative again. And it was really very low key at the time, right? I guess so 2017, it was kind of a rough year for us, just business wise, and I needed a creative outlet. So I was doing a lot of stuff where, I'd draw these Bitcoin doodles on the memo pads of Philippine banks. I thought that was kind of ironic. I guess I was trying
Yeah.
to be ironic. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
was drawing it with right underneath the letterhead of kind of one of these banks, right? So I was doing that, and then I just posted on Facebook or Twitter. It was kind of funny, I guess. And then as I got more and more into it, I realized that I actually really miss creating art, because the thing about art is, well, I mean, a lot of activities are like this for me, but with art, um, you can really lose yourself in this activity where kind of you sit down in front of a piece of paper or kind of in front of your tablet or your screen or whatever, and you start working, and then you look up and 4 hours have passed, right? And you are so in the zone that you don't want to sleep. You want to just keep going for as long as you possibly can. And um, I found that kind of in the zone activity, that kind of focus, I found it again in art after not having done it for nearly 2 decades. So 2017 was a very pivotal moment for me because I started to kind of really like this mode where I could do art and I could talk about crypto and I'd make my friends laugh, and kind of the I was very slowly kind of using the doodles, these cartoons, to kind of get mainstream people slightly more interested in things like Bitcoin and crypto, because to them they were just funny doodles, but when they looked at them, they were like, oh, okay, so the Bitcoin price is now $2,000. That's interesting. Because I would do these doodles, I'd usually kind of say what the Bitcoin price was at the time. um, and that's kind of how I started with CryptoPop. CryptoPop is my artist name. Yeah, so all of these little doodles and stuff, like, they started first as literal kind of you know ballpoint pen drawings on bank memo pads. That's what they were. And then I started, I mean, obviously it wasn't enough for me to kind of just keep doing it on memo paper, for God's sake. So eventually I started to rediscover digital art. And it was like, it just kind of took off from there. I did not really make much money from it at all for the first, I would say, 2 years, actually, maybe not even, yeah, like about 2 years or so. But that story kind of dovetails into how I kind of got into Curio Cards in 2017 also.
Oh, cool. Well, why don't we just jump in and why don't you tell that story then?
Yeah. So, okay. 2017. So I was saying that it was kind of a rough year for us business wise. I spent a lot of time flying back and forth from Manila to San Francisco. I was mostly looking for investors to kind of put some money into, our young Philippine crypto exchange. And, kind of the problem with being a Filipino founder in San Francisco, kind of a lot of investors there probably couldn't even pick the Philippines out on a map. And it's so that means like the amount of information you'd have to be able to download to them in a short amount of time is pretty massive, right? They don't know the market, they don't know the economics, and they barely know the culture of the country. And yeah, it just makes it very hard to kind of try to raise money. So me, Filipino founder, kind of doing this stuff solo because my team was back here, here in the Philippines. So I was kind of doing these trips to San Francisco. I tried to stay as long as humanly possible, and I was working with very little resources, right? So I was sleeping in some pretty crappy places. I'm trying to be kind about that, but I want to give some detail here just because this is kind of important, right? So I've slept in they were called like startup houses back then, which is kind of a euphemism for a barracks, really. Because like there was like 15 bunk beds in a big room, so 30 other some of them or also startup founders, I guess, who were kind of trying to save money, right? And was like just being crammed in there with a whole bunch of strangers. That's not a pleasant place for someone to be living by any stretch, but it is what I had to do in order to kind of just kind of stretch our resources as much as I could. And one of the funny little kind of secret recipes that I found for saving money in San Francisco was that if you attended every single crypto meetup, there was always free food and free drinks, right? So like I would do these as basically every meetup that I could find on the calendar, I just go to it, right? And you could get like, and you know that there would be like free pizza there or free beer. There's one specific one called so this was a regular meetup. It was called Proof of Drink, and it was staged very often at a place called El Rio in the Mission in San Francisco. So this was I think it was almost every other Thursday night or something like that. It was very regular. A lot of the time it was sponsored by Coinbase. So this was back in the day when Coinbase still sponsored meetups. It was like, 57, maybe 50 to 60 people, not a whole bunch of people, but kind of passionate people, right? People who went out of their way to meet other people in the industry. So it was fun. And as I mentioned, it was free dinner each time. So I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll go. At this point in my career, I'd been doing the doodles on Twitter for several months. So kind of, I'd already gotten a few followers who kind of appreciated the art, thought it was funny and stuff like that. And I remember one particular Thursday night, this was in, I believe, late March or early April or something like that. A couple guys approached me in that meetup, and they were asking me about kind of the crypto cartoons, right? Because I think they recognized some of the cartoons there. And they came to me and they said that, hey, we're putting together this digital trading card project, and we're writing it in Ethereum. We're looking for artists in the community who want to kind of contribute some of their artwork to this thing. And I'll be honest, like I did not really know anything about smart contracts back then. I was very much kind of just really focused on Bitcoin, and I knew Ethereum was a thing for a lot of people, but I wasn't really I wasn't spending a lot of time really understanding how these things work. To me, was more like, oh well, these guys recognize that the art is good enough to be put in a collection. I think that was very flattering. And honestly, since I'd never made any money from my artwork, I figured any non-zero amount that I could make from the art that I had made would be pretty cool, right? And again, right, I don't have to keep saying it, but yeah, I was definitely very resource constrained back then. So yeah, sure, I said yes. I contributed 3 of my art. They were all dogs, and we thought it was kind of cute to do like a dog themed thing. And I think someone told me that they were the first dogs on Ethereum. I don't know if that's true, but I suppose so. I mean, like, it's not like we had a whole bunch of people doing stuff like that back then. Now, I contributed the art, and I kind of lost touch with the team. I actually, kind of life kind of took over, and like I had so many things that I had to do kind of back home, and I was still trying to raise money, all of that stuff, right? So the rest of my 2017 just kind of flew by, and as far as I knew, the project hadn't done well, and the project team stopped talking to me, and I assumed that it was because maybe that kind of killed the project and stuff like that. That project was Curio Cards, and I completely forgot about it, right? So fast forward to 2021. Many things have happened in my own life, not the least of which is that we had a global pandemic. I wasn't even living in Manila anymore. Sorry, you were going to ask a question?
No, I was just saying, yeah, I mean, that was big too.
Yeah. That was kind of a big deal. Yeah, the whole lockdown thing, that was kind of a big deal. But a lot of things had changed in my life by that point. I was living on the beach here in the Philippines, kind of 4 hours north of the capital. That's kind of where I camped out during the lockdown. And I woke up one Saturday morning, and my Twitter inbox was blowing up with DMs from people I'd never met before, and I'd never interacted before. They were all asking me about this old collection of NFTs that I had been a part of back in 2017. Do I have any more copies or editions of that left? Did you know that people are starting to get really excited about it? And I was like, I really didn't know what the hell it was, right? So I had to actually go back through old Skype conversations because I couldn't find anything in my inbox. So I had to go back through Skype archives and stuff like that, and I found it. I finally found it. It was like, oh, it's Curio Cards. Okay, yeah, I remember. It's these guys that I met in SF all those years ago, and yeah, I mean, the rest of that story is kind of now pretty well known. But I'll mention one thing that to me is kind of incredible about the whole thing, right? So one is that because this stuff was on the blockchain, a couple of things were very easy to prove. One is that we were the first one, we were the first NFT art collection. The second thing is that the artists never got paid because stuff never got sold back in 2017. So because it was so easy to prove that, all of the artists from the original collection each got their share kind of simultaneously as soon as all of this stuff was unearthed. And then one of the other things that happened very quickly was when the whole collection got listed on OpenSea in its wrapped form, the community kind of instituted this 1% royalty fee for the artist. So we continue to receive a small royalty from the sales of Curio Cards even to this day. And it's now been, I think, 16, 17 months since then. And it's such a boon for me. And one more thing that I kind of wanted to say, and this is going to blow most people's minds. I usually open with this when I tell this story. If you look at the sales volume on OpenSea right now, it's about 38,000 Ethereum, something like that, for the Curio Cards collection, right? At the high point of Ether price, it comes out to about $130 million. So here's the part that kind of will blow your mind, right? As if $130 million wouldn't be enough to blow most people's minds. Here's the part that really blew my mind. The entire country of the Philippines, entire visual arts industry on any given year only does $90 million in sales.
No way.
So that means that this one rando collection of 7 artists, one of them Filipino, that and NFT art, and we're not even in the top 25 highest selling NFT art collections, right? We're not even there, and we outsold an entire country.
That's
so
incredible.
I kind of when I tell this story, I usually kind of start with that because I kind of wanted to emphasize to people that if you don't think that NFT art is massive, have a look at this, right? Because it's already outsold your entire country. So I'll usually give this talk in the Philippines for obvious reasons, right? Because it really resonates with people. They don't realize how big NFT art is until they realize that it's actually already dwarfed. Like a single collection on OpenSea has dwarfed an entire country's art industry. And again, we're not even in the top 25. So it's like it just kind of expands everyone's understanding of how massive this thing has actually become. So yeah, all of these things kind of happened simultaneously, in 2021 for us, where Curio Cards was rediscovered. We started to do bonkers volume on OpenSea. By October of that year, we were auctioned at Christie's. A single collection of 30 copies of Curio Cards was auctioned for a little over $1 million, like $1.1 million. And to me, an art school kid, right? Like it's funny because, I'd never even dreamed, that wasn't even part of my dreams, right? As an art school major, it never occurred to me that I would ever be in Christie's. I mean, this is the auction house where you would normally sell Picassos, or kind of Bill Gates bought Da Vinci's notebook in Christie's, New York,
I remember
for $30 million,
yeah.
right? Yeah, and we were sold there, right? So again, me being a rando artist from the Philippines, it's not really something you ever expect your work to hit. And it just kind of happened randomly without even really any energy from us, right? It was just kind of happening. The community was happening. And like this whole, I guess, and I usually try to say that, kind of the crypto industry is chaos. It's pure chaos. And out of that chaos, sometimes we see miracles. And it became a really, really big part of kind of my own motivations from 2021 onwards, to kind of try to recreate some of that miraculous chaos for other people too. That's kind of how I ended up with the CryptoPop Art Guild, which is kind of the nonprofit organization that I put together, kind of with some of the funds that I was receiving from the Curio Cards team, and from the Curio Cards royalties. Travis from the Curio Cards founders also kind of made a donation into it, because like he was really I guess he was really impressed by kind of what we were able to accomplish so quickly with the nonprofit, and he wanted to support it. Yeah, and so it's cool how kind of the community has really come together to support what we're doing. So I'm really grateful for all of it, I guess. Yeah. So my general sentiment about the whole thing is partially that I am flabbergasted, but I'm also grateful, right? There's so much gratitude. There's almost so much gratitude from me that kind of stuff has happened in such a way that gives more opportunities to other people, not just myself. And I'm trying to reroute as much of it as I can in order to kind of recreate some of that miraculous chaos.
It has to be a little bit surreal, and probably took you a little bit of time to really accept that all that actually happened. I mean, that's have your art in Christie's and Sotheby's and
yeah,
I mean,
right. Yeah, Sotheby's was the other one, wasn't it? I forgot to mention that. Yeah, that's it's only the world's 2 largest auction houses after all.
The most prestigious auction houses,
Yeah.
There's one other thing I thought I would throw out. I wrote an article earlier this year, and when I was doing research, I found another statistic that blew me away, and it was something in the neighborhood of in 2020, the global art and antique market was valued in the neighborhood of like $51 billion. And last year, the NFT market alone had done something in the neighborhood of $45 billion.
Oh my God.
So I mean,
okay.
I know, right?
Yeah. Crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot, right? So the power of the internet basically amplifies the crap out of everything. And then the speed of crypto transactions make it so that, kind of the way that these things grow just happens at a pace that always surprises us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's crazy. It's crazy to kind of think about that. Just a tangential thing, and this is like a funny little thing that you probably find interesting. A year ago, I was invited by the U.S. Department of Justice to talk about NFTs.
No way.
And the actually, you're not gonna like the title of the forum. It was actually anti-money laundering practices in NFT art. That was kind of the that was the title, because at the time NFT art only accounted for, so I think it was about $10 billion. Like something like that. It was like it was in the low maybe 10 billion, something like that. So even then they were already starting to look at it. meaning that because it was sizable, because it's already well known that about 10% of the global art trading volume is actually money laundering, at least 10%, maybe even more than that. So they were thinking, okay, well, NFT art is even easier to do that with, because now there's not even a logistical problem, right? You don't even need, I mean, they're just digits, or, you know, it's just code. So it makes it even easier. So yeah, so they started looking at NFT art as a kind of money laundering instrument very early on. And I thought it was kind of hilarious that they invited me to talk about it. I was like, I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'll tell you about NFT art, I guess. I mean, they wanted to have a resource speaker who could speak to maybe the positives of it too, so it would be more like a more balanced panel. Because otherwise, I guess it would just be like people talking about how easy it is for people to launder money with crypto. And the thing is, we've known that for ages. It still isn't the most popular way for people to launder money. Like good old fashioned cash still is.
Exactly. I mean, I really get resentful and upset when people try and use this the old argument of money laundering for NFTs or crypto, because by far HSBC was set up just to launder money from the opium wars in China. I mean, its explicit goal was laundering drug money. I mean, there's like all these big mega banks, that is their business. They get fined billions of dollars routinely for money laundering. That's what they do. Right. So anything that crypto does is, a shade on that. So
sure. Yeah. It's but it's one of the things that people always use to knock on it, right? Because I mean, it's the same thing as kind of, the climate impact, the environmental impact, like things like that. I mean, we're a tiny percentage of kind of the world's excesses. But we tend, I don't know, I guess maybe society tends to be more critical of new things way more than it is of things that have existed for a long time, even though those things that have existed for a long time have always had those problems, right?
You're right. So, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. There's a over exaggerated emphasis of these issues on the new stuff, and people don't even acknowledge what's like with the traditional banking system. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of energy and waste there that people don't like to address.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not to mention the fact that, I mean, they need armored trucks.
Yeah.
It's like they need armored trucks to move stuff. And like, it's, I mean, just the idea that, like we're still doing the paper thing in armored trucks. We're still doing that. Like, that's crazy. It's like, again, it's in the 2020s. We should be thinking well beyond that. But
well, what the other thing that's absurd too is just paper money too. One of my favorite stories, I read this, there's a famous book called Fiat Money Inflation in France, and there's the story of where essentially kind of like what a lot of countries have gone through with hyperinflation, and kind of like similar to what we're starting to go through, where inflation really picks up and they're using paper money. Well, they had this guy that was in charge of printing the money, and they would distribute the money to the government in these like horse-drawn carts, right? They just like have these truckloads of or horse loads of paper money, exactly.
Yeah.
And he would get a small cut as his for his doing the managing all of this. Well, one day there was a mix-up, and the shipments got reversed, and the government found out that he was printing more for himself than for the government.
Oh my God. Nice. Yeah, well, the devil is always in the transfer, isn't it? Like the middlemen are. It's like, that's pretty funny though. Yeah. So I mean, we're still seeing that. We're just seeing it kind of at a more digital level, right? With correspondent banking or central banking, like these kind of people that are bridging transactions between one customer to another customer, all take a little bit off of it. And they can do quite a lot of interesting things with the fact that money is sitting with them for, T+1 days or whatever it is. So yeah, this, the whole system is, I mean, I guess I'm preaching to the choir when I say the whole system needs an overhaul. But yeah, I think, I guess it feels a lot more, I mean, to me anyway, it feels a lot more urgent in countries where neither the banking or the government kind of is on your side.
Yeah.
And like we don't have the same kind of strength of voice as a, you know, as a population. We don't have that kind of the kind of voice that would allow us to really, you know, just talk back at the government here. So it's like my thing is, you know, we maybe we don't, maybe you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a thing where we try to like, you know, get into a real debate with the government, you know, like just vote with your actual wealth, vote with your wealth by moving it off of this fiat system and move it into something that gives you the flexibility that you want.
That's
Yeah,
that's how I like to imagine it too, is essentially that what we have to do is build a parallel system. Instead of
right,
fighting the current system, we have to build
right,
an alternative and move to and just move on to that and let this,
yeah,
you know, one of the reasons I'm really passionate, especially right now, about increasing crypto adoption is, you know, we have the WEF and all of these other central banks are now openly talking about trying to foist upon us the CBDCs
yeah,
for their own
yeah, yeah,
aim, that
yeah, yeah,
there's no benefit for us in these
yeah,
schemes that they're cooking up.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
my goal
yeah,
is to, I'd like to see crypto adoption become widespread enough to where they aren't even tempted to try and, you know,
right,
try and outright ban it. I mean,
yeah,
and given an open given open competition, I mean, who wouldn't choose, like, you know, Bitcoin or Ethereum as, even if
yeah,
you're not going to use it, even if it as just as a store of value, it's way superior than
yeah,
I wouldn't trust any central bank or any national,
yeah,
you know, national
yeah.
government.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with you. The CBDC thing, I think that that's kind of such a funny little, like, it's like, why do we need that? Like, that's just gonna give them easier ways to shut down our accounts,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like,
The
why would you ever accept an instrument like that if you were
yeah, I
an
mean,
intelligent person?
yeah, exactly. I mean, we had one of those. I forget the name of the of one of the guys who was behind it. I think he was out of Britain, but he was openly saying that, yeah, this will give us the ability to programmatically like determine whether or not you can, you know, spend funds at XY vendor. You know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like,
It's horrifying.
yeah.
Exactly. I
Why
mean,
would I ever be okay with that?
exactly. Yeah. I mean,
Crazy.
and that's
Crazy.
my point, is that, hey, even if they manage to forcibly roll that out, we don't have to use that for anything other than what we absolutely have to. We can
Sure. Yeah.
resist and I
Yeah.
mean, even a tiny percentage of global population adopting crypto
Yeah.
would really explode it.
Oh yeah. So I've kind of the way that I've been living my life over the last 3 years or so now is so I'm 99% crypto, and I only have pesos in my bank account mostly because I still can't pay rent with, you know, with crypto, right? So
Mhm.
I still have to pay my bills in some form of peso. And what I do is I just liquidate a certain amount of crypto every month and do all my bills in one go. So my bank account looks very fishy from a banker's perspective because, you know, you'll get like, you know, whatever it is. I'm not gonna like I'll pretend that it's like $10,000. It'll suddenly receive $10,000 worth of pesos and then immediately kind of pay it all out, right? So it basically
Yeah,
looks like money laundering.
yeah.
But like but that's the only way I've found that I can protect my position, my cash position, where I'm not just losing year on year with inflation, with other economic forces, with things like that,
And
right? So that's
and when you
the most safe way I could do it.
And when you put it that way, about, you know, every 10 years losing half your value, I mean,
Yeah,
again, especially for people that are not making a lot, or even if you are, I mean, even if you're able to save up $50,000 to work your full time and save $50,000 and have it cut in half by the time you reach your
yeah,
10 is
yeah.
horrifying. I mean,
Yeah, of course. I mean, what happens to retirement? Like your retirement is basically losing its your runway for your retirement is shrinking, with every decade that you're saving up for. It's ridiculous, right? It's not supposed to work that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just not a great situation. So crazy.
Well, one thing I did want to touch on real quick is your cards. So one thing I thought was really great is the first card that you submitted for and was accepted for Curio Cards was the user activated soft fork. So
Yeah.
you're really capturing a moment there in
Yeah.
Bitcoin history right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was honestly, I don't know. I'm trying to remember now what the motivation was for drawing dogs in the first place. But yeah, I wanted to do a commentary on user activated soft forks. And that was, again, like, this is kind of a moment in time that a lot of newcomers in crypto they have no concept of what this was, right? So the UASF was kind of this massive deal in the Bitcoin days, that would eventually cause like a massive fork, right? But like
Mhm.
back then, it was something that was still being debated on, and kind of I wanted to, and I guess me as an artist, I think what was going through my head was I really wanted to get better at drawing dogs. I think that was what it was. So I was more like, so I wanted to do like, I'm gonna do a whole month where I'm just gonna draw dogs, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. I'm just gonna try to work a dog in there just to get better at it, right? I think that was all it was. So so yeah, I did the UASF one, where kind of the dog, the dog represents Bitcoin here. So he's dipping his toe into the water because he's not sure if this is kind of the thing he wants to do, right? So that was kind of that was what the message on that thing was. So there was uncertainty in his face.
That
So
was
that's
yeah,
yeah.
that was one of the most contentious moments in Bitcoin history, is
Yeah,
the whole debate
right.
around it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember that kind of I was watching that thing from where I was in the Philippines, and I was like, oh my God, is this actually going to cause a massive, like, whatever price drop or whatever? And like there was a lot of really uncertain times, and especially that year, later on that year, when the fork actually happened, like if you were in the wrong Telegram groups, like there were people chanting chain death, about the main Bitcoin
Mhm.
blockchain. So I was in a lot of Asian groups, right? So kind of that was more leaning towards Chinese users and stuff like that, and a lot of the Bitcoin Cash folks were kind of originating from kind of that area of the world, right? So it was a much stronger culture. It felt a lot stronger for someone who was kind of witnessing this. It felt like there was a really big concerted effort to try to make Bitcoin Cash the main chain. Anyway, so I mean, we all know the ending of that story. Now it's not really that big a deal, but back then it was scary. It was really
Yeah.
scary to kind of see all of that stuff happening. Anyway, so yeah, so that was the first card, and I think the second card was the one where I started to really get into my stride for drawing dogs. because like in a whole mess of dogs, right? So I was kind of a little I challenged myself with that one because I was like, I'm gonna draw a whole bunch of different dogs because I'm so confident now as a dog artist.
I love the story behind these.
Yeah. Honestly, with the thing about artists is that a lot of the time the motivation is something very, very practical and personal, right? So the things that make you excited about your work does not necessarily have to have big meaning other than I really wanted to practice dogs or whatever, whatever it was. So in this case, the dogs playing poker. So that was the title of that piece originally. That's actually based on a very old 19th century painting where these dogs are playing poker. And so kind of I'm referencing that. And in fact, there's another NFT artist, Jose Delbo, who actually makes his own version of that later on in the year. His version is superheroes. So his
Yeah.
superheroes are playing poker. So we're both referencing the same 19th century painting there. Now, with mine, of course, I changed it into like they were playing with coins that had kind of crypto names on them, right? So you'll
Yeah.
see these little details where one of the dogs is lending another dog some coins under the table, kind of things like that. And it's just meant to be like a little cutesy kind of thing. And it was kind of a general joke about how a lot of altcoiners back in 2017 were basically doing nothing but shilling their coins, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, everyone was back then. There is one detail there that most people miss. Um, if you look at the background, there is a kind of a weird pixelated kind of work there.
Yeah.
That is a screenshot of a subreddit called Our Place, where they were kind of selling pixels in that subreddit, and you could kind of buy pixels within this massive piece of artwork. You could buy pixels and kind of put logos and stuff on it if you wanted. Like all you had to do was kind of pay a certain amount, and you could kind of own one section of that massive canvas, and then you could kind of turn it into whatever you wanted. And some people had kind of put the Bitcoin logo on there, so I kind of screenshotted because I wanted to kind of commemorate that moment. But yeah, so I guess that whole thing was a very much a product of its time. Most of my work is like that. I try to kind of like really bait it because kind of that makes it more meaningful to me. I think that art is kind of it's like an indirect it's an indirect look at history because it is a reflection of the moment that it was created, either because of its genre, its era, or kind of the details that the artist choose to put in them. And in this case, yeah, I wanted to put in that little our place subreddit thing because I thought it was cute that someone had kind of, you know, plastered a Bitcoin logo on it. I remember that I did most of this dogs playing poker piece. I did this while sitting on a plane from San Francisco to the Philippines. It's a long flight. It's about 13 hours, give or take. And I had a real hard time kind of sleeping through these flights, mostly because I was flying coach. So it wasn't exactly the most comfortable place, regardless of whether you were in a seated position or a partially reclined position. So I just decided that I'd try to, spend as much time as I could just kind of drawing. At least I'm productive and I feel good while I'm doing it, right? So I did most of this piece. I think I completed it in a single flight. And I was pretty proud of it at the time, right? Because every dog there looks like a dog. I was like, that is the highest bar that I can set for myself as an artist. Yeah. So that was and that continues to be the piece that most people really remember me for. I think the dog playing poker one is it's funny and it's kind of cute, and yeah. So that's the one that people really remember of my Curio cards. It was the third one where I was starting to get more I started getting into this more thematic thing where I wanted to do a to the moon my version of To the Moon. It's a very common Bitcoin refrain. I don't actually know when that started. Like, do you remember like what year you started
No.
first seeing? Yeah, I mean, it's an old one,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I
Mhm.
can't even recall exactly when we started seeing it. I mean, we know exactly when HODL started because you can see the
Yeah.
timestamp on the forum, but like with To the Moon, it was a little bit more vague, I think. Anyway, so I wanted to do my version of To the Moon. And I did Bulldogs. The reason why I did Bulldogs was because I really didn't like drawing bulls, actually. So that was the other reason why I wanted to
Okay.
get started drawing dogs in the first place, was because I know that at the time Bitcoin really referenced bulls and stuff like that, being bullish. And the thing is, like, bulls are not nice visually. They don't look nice. They're not cute. There's very few ways to draw them where they would look kind of visually engaging. They always have to be kind of slamming into the frame
Mhm.
in order for them to look good. And with dogs, you can just do a lot of different things, right? So I wanted to do, so I did bulldogs. It was kind of a weird, it was just like wordplay, I guess. So my Bitcoin bulldogs to the moon image is them on a rocket ship, right? And that's all there was to it. It was really just kind of, I wanted to have at least one image that was kind of specifically referencing the to the moon catchphrase. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up with the third one. There's a bunch of other ones that that didn't make it to Curio Cards. But I did a whole series of kind of cute dog cartoons that year, and I still kind of want to go back to kind of dogs just because I like I find that they're a lot more expressive than any other animal. And it's possibly also because humans just spend a lot of time with dogs as pets. So we kind of become
Mhm.
like hyper aware of their emotions and kind of the way that they kind of interact with us. So we just become like we're so attuned to it by now. But yeah, I find that they're very, very fun subjects to illustrate. So I think my main two things that I find the most fun illustrating these days is either dogs or androids. And with my android stuff, like I spent a lot of time later on in my NFT career, like I'd spend months kind of working on like a single piece because I draw these very, very, very intricate androids that are full of tiny details. Like you can see every cable and every cog and every hydraulic pipe or whatever that make up their form. And I kind of like, I'm really into kind of making artwork that is filled with detail. Just because I want people to kind of stand in front of it and spend a lot of time thinking about it or looking at all kind of the little things, right? So it's very much the opposite of what I did with the dog art, because the dog art is all very it's cartoony, right? It's quite easy to digest what's going on. So I kind of go in either direction sometimes, depending on what my mood is. I like to go like extremely detailed, or I like to go like very cartoony and just kind of do like a very quick one, right? Either of those are very fun. But you can probably guess like which one of them are easier to do based on the amount of effort that I just described.
Oh yeah, I mean, I really like the cards that you submitted. Like you pointed out, one of the things I liked about the dogs trading one is like just the currencies that it's referencing too. Like Zcash and
Yeah,
XMR and
yeah,
LTC
yeah,
and
yeah,
DAS, and it's that's kind of a throwback too. And what it reminds me of is back then, the privacy coins were like, they looked super promising. Like
yeah,
they did offer something that was that I thought was needed in the space, and that they never
yeah,
really took off. So this is
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing also that I like to always remind people, kind of, so this is more of a just a generalized message, but a lot of people are so excited about things like Solana and stuff like that. And like I get it. I get that, maybe especially if you've only been around for a couple of years or so, you think that, Solana is really like, just the next generation possibly. And I like to remind them that, the top 10 in crypto market cap is like, it changes every 4 years.
Yeah.
It's a completely different set of coins. The only difference, the only ones that have been the same from 2017 is Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I guess Tether if you count the stable coins, right? But like all of the other non-stable coins, it's a completely different set of people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and like you should, it's important to remember that before you kind of make these very strong claims about kind of what your favorite blockchain, whatever it is, whichever one it
Yeah.
is, what it's
Yeah, and I
capable of
think
doing.
I think a good reason for that too, Lewis, is that for any quote unquote altcoin to that, even if they have a unique feature, like they're not the original to do it. Like for like
Yeah,
Ethereum is the first EVM. It's the
yeah,
granddaddy, and then Bitcoin is where it all
yep.
started. So
Hmm.
even if you have a novel feature,
Yeah,
just because you're the first with XYZ feature, like that's not really enough on its own to like to the
yeah,
market to
yeah,
justify your existence versus someone else coming out with just that new feature plus Y as
yeah,
well, right?
right,
Exactly.
right.
So I mean,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's hard for some people to grasp, right? Because we tend to get stuck on things like transactions per second, for example,
yeah,
and like, God, like that's not really. I mean,
yeah,
it's not that big a deal. Jeez, like there's only like how many? There's not that many crypto users yet, and the thing about transactions per second is that eventually the technology will catch up in various different ways to address that. It's not the main thing that's going to make your blockchain the next Ethereum, right? Or the next
yeah,
Bitcoin. So yeah, it's like we get really caught up in stuff like that, and they're just details.
right.
So I think that, yeah, if you want to make the next Ethereum, you can't just be faster. You have to be 10x better, and that's across many different parameters, right? I mean, it's got to
Yeah,
be more as secure or better, it's got to have a bigger developer community, which is a really tough one to ask for, right? I mean, just the idea that you would have a bigger developer community than Ethereum is that I can't imagine that would be easy for
That's
any. Yeah.
that's what I was going to bring up is
Yeah.
the mind share that Ethereum has
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
astounding. We have some of the
Yeah.
I mean an amazing amount of brilliant people working on
Yeah.
Ethereum. I mean,
Yeah.
it's astounding. And I
Yeah.
mean,
That's the one thing that you would have a very, very difficult time, kind of leaping over. You can't leapfrog that. I mean,
yeah.
and Cardano tried, right? Like Cardano has been trying for years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
Did you hear what
Um,
happened with Cardano too?
recently, is that
Yeah.
what's the news recently?
Well, it was maybe it was 6 months or 8 months ago, but
Okay,
they
okay.
kept finally like, hey, we're finally gonna do it, guys. We're finally gonna have smart contracts. And
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
the way the way they implemented their system, like any DEX
Mm-hmm.
or Uniswap type system could only do like 1 TX per block or
Oh,
something.
right,
Oh, it
right,
just
right. Yeah, yeah.
completely nuked it. I mean, just
Right.
worthless.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah, and if you know a little bit about kind of the history of Ethereum and
yeah,
Cardano, right? Like
yeah.
those two blockchains have been like at war with each other for a really long time now. So,
Yeah, I mean, he used to be for a moment. I think he was the
mhm.
CEO of
Mm,
Ethereum,
yeah.
but
Yep. Yep. Yep.
there's just well, I don't want to get into his personal stuff, but
Right.
I just thought it was a lot of there was a lot of hype there for Cardano that it could never really deliver.
Right.
But to
Right.
your point, I mean, the other thing that the another obstacle for anyone competing with Ethereum now is so not only do we have the amazing amount of brain power and not just developer mind share, but we also have user adoption and user acceptance and
Mm-hmm.
trust. We also have a tremendous amount of assets now that are riding on top of that too, and in terms of total value too. I mean,
Right.
things like Bored Apes and
Yeah.
CryptoPunks is like billions of dollars
Yeah.
worth of assets that already ride. It has its own like gravity in terms of
Yeah.
in terms of attracting and keeping users too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean
Here's
it
a question that I've wanted to pose this for a while. I don't know who would actually go to the trouble of trying to give me an accurate answer, but like I think that it's not accurate to call the Ethereum market cap what it's listed on in
yeah,
like if you go to like coin market cap or coin gecko, right, there's like a specific number there for its market cap. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but like I don't think it's accurate to say that because a whole bunch of stable coins are on there, a whole bunch of other tokens are on there, and then the whole NFT ecosystem to a certain extent is on there, right? So like I wonder what the correct number is if you actually pile on all of the assets that are reliant on Ethereum's existence. Because I
exactly.
think it would exceed Bitcoins, but I don't know what the number is. I just want to
Yeah.
know what the it's like. I wish someone would do kind of the math on that, because I mean, I imagine it would be a very thankless job, because as soon as you publish it, you'd get so many people who would just kind of attack you viciously
Yeah.
about like, but what about this, and why did you do this instead of that, right? And it's like, this is just the community, this is crypto Twitter for you.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see what that number would actually be.
Yeah, I am too now that you bring it up because
Yeah.
just between punks and apes alone, that's a probably 2 or 3 billion right there. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, the amount of stable coins and just also other project tokens,
Yeah.
there's so much value riding on top of Ethereum. I mean, I
Yeah.
at this point, I'm really they've been talking about POS for a long time now, and
Mm-hmm.
we're finally going to see the merge this year. It looks like I'm
Yeah.
really super excited that it just feels like we're right on the cusp of some really massive changes that it's gonna. I'm excited for what this will allow people to do on top of Ethereum. So
Yeah. 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 You know what? I might since I'm trying to figure out the answer to this question, what I might do actually is I might actually reach out to the folks in CoinGecko and see if
yeah,
anyone's tried to do that math, because I feel like that's the only fair way to kind of just talk about what Ethereum's real impact is, right? Because
Yeah.
like it birthed, or it made possible so many other concepts. Many of them like are still reliant on Ethereum's existence to this day, right? I mean, so like all of the layer twos that are built on top of Ethereum will obviously not, they can't just switch to like Solana or anything. They're built for Ethereum. So every single one of those layer twos need to also be kind of added to, Ethereum's footprint. And again, all of the NFT projects. Yeah, right. It's like, I just want to know like what that number actually looks like.
Another
It's so,
interesting
I'm so curious. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
another interesting angle too is, like we have like the petrodollar where, that
Mm,
drives a lot of demand for dollars. In a
mhm.
similar sense, now we've got enough of an ecosystem on Ethereum where there's demand for Ethereum as a mechanism to pay for all of these assets that people want to buy, even for people that don't care about Ethereum, they're forced
Right,
to buy that in order to transact it and acquire that,
right,
right? So it's kind of got
right,
its
right.
it's got its own like self-circular demand cycle going there
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. I got what you mean. I get what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing we have to an actual ecosystem, right? Like a
Mhm.
fully working like economy almost internally. Like you could almost just live your entire life. Well, assuming your entire life was nothing but digital assets, I guess, because you still have the problem of groceries and stuff like that, I suppose.
Yeah, but I've never been more excited about Ethereum now that we're finally like with the roll-up technologies and with the merge
Yeah,
coming. I think
yeah.
I don't know, I'm really excited about the future. I know prices are down right now and some people are bummed out, but I mean this is a great time to be involved.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we've learned enough from the last two crypto winters that, like all you got to do is really hold on. You should try not to liquidate what you can afford not to liquidate. But obviously, like if your financial position forces you to do so, then obviously don't prioritize your Bitcoin holdings over your health, for example. Like one of my biggest regrets was kind of during the winter of 2015 to 2016. Like I liquidated a lot of my Bitcoin. And it wasn't because I wasn't a believer in the technology. It was just that like I really needed money. Right.
I,
And
I
I
had to
think
do
that,
the same too.
yeah, a lot of people kind of back then, I remember even Andreas Antonopoulos himself was kind of saying how, most people think that he's some kind of Bitcoin millionaire. But like, at least back then, I should say, but, like he was flying around the world sometimes on his own dime, doing all these talks and stuff like that, and really being the voice of the community for a really long time. And, during the winter, the crypto winter of that era, he had to kind of liquidate a lot of his crypto in order to afford kind of the lifestyle that he needed to do, right? And it wasn't until much later that I think the community got together to donate Bitcoin to him or something like that, and he was kind of he was really overwhelmed with the support. I know that that's in a Twitter thread somewhere buried in Twitter, but I remember that I really resonated with what he was saying, because I totally get it. Like I was a massive believer, but I couldn't afford to not liquidate because I had bills to pay. And that's just the reality, right? I mean, so what I'm hoping is that, well, at least, so in the subsequent winters, I was at least in a slightly better financial position so that I was not liquidating as much. But, yeah, I was sitting on quite a lot of Bitcoin in 2015, and like a lot of it I had to kind of burn in order to survive.
Yeah, I had to do the same with some bills in
Yeah.
2015, but I was
Yeah.
lucky enough where I picked up a side hustle during the
Mm-hmm.
next winter in the
Right.
2018, 2019, and I was able to like buy a little bit of Ethereum and some other stuff on the side as
Nice.
because no one else cared, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
just was able to stack up a little bit, but you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
y-
yeah. I mean that's the my advice to people now. So
yeah,
for 2021, 2022, I assume this winter is probably going to hit until 2023. So I usually say look for a side hustle that
mhm,
will allow you to buy crypto at the prices that we're seeing right now, because we're not gonna. I mean, it's unlikely that we will see these prices again in 5 years from now. So if you can, just look for a quick side job, right? And there's so much work out there that kind of, I mean, even if all you do is stay in the crypto world, I mean, here in the Philippines, you could be a Discord server manager, or kind of coordinate community activities and stuff like that. I mean, that's all still kind of crypto related tangentially. So you never
Mhm.
even left the crypto community. You're still there. You're just kind of fulfilling one of the roles that needs doing. So yeah, that's what I usually try to advise. Even if it's just a small amount, as long as it's not impacting your bottom line, like you still have the money that you need to survive, try to buy as much as you can while it's cheap.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is I've been doing I've been buying as much as I can, and I've been picking up I'm really big into the historic NFTs right now too, and I've been getting what I can now because I have my take on the historic NFTs is kind of like we were talking about with your art, is they're really capturing like some of these like timestamps of crypto
Yeah,
history. So
right.
I really like picking up that stuff. And
Yeah.
so yeah, but I agree. I mean, I can't can you imagine in like whether it's 5 or 10 years, Ethereum being worth, whatever it was, whatever is now like 15 or $1,800? I mean, I can't
Yeah,
imagine
yeah,
that being
yeah, yeah, yeah,
possible.
yeah. Me
And
neither.
same thing
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Bitcoin. I mean, it
Right.
would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think that with a lot of these, so with Bitcoin and Ethereum, I'm a lot more confident when I say that.
mhm,
I'm not confident when it comes to any other altcoin. So
yeah,
I guess that's kind of the difference, right? And I kind of go back to what I was originally saying, where, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, we were looking at a completely different top 10. And yeah, the only thing that has stayed the same is Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I feel very uncomfortable making bets on any other things, and saying that, oh, I think it's ridiculous that, say, I don't know, I don't think I'd ever see Solana again at $39, or
yeah.
whatever, right? I don't
Well,
know. I don't know. I really don't know.
and I've come to agree with that position because I speculated a lot in the altcoins over the years,
Hmm.
and and I learned the hard way. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have been way better off not even touching the stuff, because even though there were
Yeah.
some legitimate like technical advancements and things that
Hmm.
you can say theoretically should have been, or like should have been big and but weren't. I
Hmm.
mean, it's I don't know, it like especially with the adoption, the lead of where Bitcoin and Ethereum are, it's the safest thing to do too. I mean,
Yeah, especially if you plan to just hold it passively. I think the
yeah,
one reason why I continue to make tiny speculative bets on alts is because that's my way of just, because in order to do it, I have to familiarize myself with what that alt is all about first.
yeah,
So it's just me kind of keeping track of the general ecosystem, right? Because it would be incorrect for you to only focus on Bitcoin if you wanted to get a really good sense of crypto in general, right? Because the
mhm,
Bitcoin thing is very separate from a lot of this stuff. And to a certain extent, even the Ethereum thing has started to kind of feel very separate from things like Solana or BNB or whatever, because these are all their own kind of ecosystems kind of standing on their own. And I want to still know a little bit about each of those, because, I get questions from people, and, kind of this new generation of kids who are coming in, their first crypto is Sol or
mhm,
BNB or I don't know, whatever else, right? So I need to at least have some opinion on it. So that's why I
mhm.
try to buy a little bit. But yeah, I don't think it's not gonna be the thing that's gonna, kind of, um, it's not a long-term strategy. It's more of, because I'm working professionally in the industry, I need to have this knowledge.
Yeah. I was trying to keep up with a lot of that stuff for a while too, but I just couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah,
have
no,
a
I get it. I
position.
totally get
I
it.
used to have a position in probably like 40 altcoins and or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I just had to consolidate and just cut
Yeah.
losses. Because one is it's too hard to even keep track of that many
Yeah.
projects, and I don't
Yep.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
to.
No, for sure. I get it. I totally get it. Like, I think that, just being able to pick like maybe at least a top 5 or 6 or whatever, just to kind of, make sure you get a kind of a good sampling of what's popular. And like
Mhm.
my version of the top 5 or top 6 is deeply informed by what the Filipino community is into.
Okay,
I don't
cool.
I don't really look at it just in terms of market cap. I think, like, because, like, for example, the Axie Infinity token is not in the top 5 or top 6. It's not. I
Mhm.
think it's not even in the top 20. So like, but I know that really matters
Okay.
to our community. So like, I'll buy a little bit of that and keep track of that and just see what you can do with it.
What
Like
what
they had
else is
some great
big?
staking rewards. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
pretty
what
good.
else is big for the Filipino community?
So so it's very, it comes and goes, right? So BNB is definitely big here, but I get it's big by market cap all over the world. Binance is one of the most popular ways to kind of turn your crypto into peso here
Mhm.
in the Philippines. What else is big here? You'll still get, actually, so this is kind of an interesting one, right? So you'll get kind of a lot of the North America or the English projects tend to come to the Philippines as their first foray into Asia, because the Philippines speaks English pretty well. So they don't have to localize, right? So
Mhm.
it's like you don't start in Vietnam because Vietnam's English speaking proportion is not that big. But
Mhm.
if you come into the Philippines, everyone can understand English. So you don't have to immediately hire translators and stuff like that, right? So
Okay.
you'll get like ICP for, it's like, I don't know if you even know
Yeah,
that one. That's Internet Computer Protocol. That's such a strange name, right?
I know, right?
Internet
Yeah,
Computer. That's a weird name.
it
I don't know,
is.
but I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So we've got like a branch of that here. XRP is still alive and well here. That's a strange one.
I know.
Yeah, so it's strange, and I actually said this on a CoinDesk interview just 2 days ago. I was saying that because the Philippines has very specific economic conditions, and we are price sensitive, and we are of a certain population age, and all of that stuff, we get a very different set of solutions that tend to stick here. So
Uh-huh.
although we mimic the United States in the sense that we're English speaking, the solutions that tend to stick here are so different from the ones that tend to stick in the United States. So just kind of if you ever get to visit and you go to any of the crypto meetups here, you'll hear a whole bunch of acronyms that maybe you've seen on Coin Market Cap, but not maybe until the second page of the the market cap listings.
Yeah.
You'll hear just a whole bunch of weird acronyms, right? And I was like, what the hell? Okay, like this is why is this a thing here? I don't really know. Sometimes it just sticks. But that's what makes it so interesting to kind of make these comparisons, right? You go from country to country, and some stuff is just so specific to this particular environment.
Well, that's cool to actually, that's actually an area where you can see the free market at work, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we
Yep.
don't really have a free market in a lot of areas in the world in a true sense. I mean, this is something where people are choosing whatever they want, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see what pans out.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thankful that, kind of there are enough accessible options out there that you can write your own ticket, really. Every country, every, region is kind of writing their own tickets about what stuff works for them. And I like that. I don't think it needs to be a one world kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
okay to, be culturally specific.
yeah, and it makes sense that, like you're saying, with being more price sensitive than they would be, it would make sense that they would be adopting tokens that have much cheaper
Yeah,
gas and fees
right.
than,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, right,
because
right.
because even until very recently, Ethereum has been super expensive for
Hmm.
transactions. So that makes a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
sense.
I mean, that's why the NFT trading thing here in the Philippines, we're not a big OpenSea user. We're massive in Magic Eden though.
Hmm.
So kind of Solana is,
Hmm.
because of the gas fees. Yeah, people just kind of gravitated towards that. I think that the other reason also is that kind of on average, Solana drops are just cheaper. Kind of the price
Yeah.
points are cheaper than OpenSea, than kind of Ethereum based ones. So yeah, although the Filipinos are very much into the whole NFT trading thing, like it's mostly in Magic Eden that I see the most activity, not in OpenSea.
Well, the user experience, like when it works on Solana, it's amazing how fast it is and how cheap it
Yeah,
is. It's
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
very impressive when it works.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's down a lot though, but yes, it's when it
exactly.
works, when it
That's what I
works,
was
it's
saying.
impressive. Gosh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got my own misgivings about Solana, but like, yeah, when it works, it's great.
Yeah, I was a lot more hyped about it until I was reading a little bit more about its protocol, and it seems like it has some weaknesses in how it does its like proof of history like
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
thing. It looks like there's some
yeah,
big trade-offs there that
yeah,
are not
yeah.
optimal. But
Yeah, I think it was like I don't know if we were reading the same one, but it was something along the lines of the next validator was
yeah,
known, it wasn't
it's
random.
predetermined. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that
So
means that you don't actually need to have enough horsepower to attack the whole network. You only need to
exactly.
be able to
You
attack the
can
weakest next node, which is
exactly. You can
that's
always be
scary.
DDoSing. Yeah, you can always just be DDoSing the next in
Yeah,
line, and you've
yeah.
taken down the network.
Yeah, yeah, that is a pretty significant weakness. I can't imagine that that's the kind of thing that they couldn't just make random. I don't know why they chose it to be kind of predetermined though. That's an
So
interesting choice.
I thought the reason they did that was to keep the latency and the TPS high, right?
Okay, all right. Well, yeah. So there is this funny tweet from Kyle Samani, one of the kind of Solana people. And it was saying that he doesn't understand why security needs to be the number one priority. Like speed seems to be more important. And I'm like, wow, that is not a tweet that
Yeah.
aged well.
No.
Um, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of, I've dealt with the information security field myself.
Mhm.
And that's the most horrifying thing anyone could ever say, 'cause
Yeah. Gosh. Oh well. So we learned the lessons, right?
yeah.
Ideally, we're learning the lessons in a emphatic enough way that we don't make the same ones. But I do feel like every cycle we tend to make some similar lessons. I feel like kind of, I don't
Mhm.
know, like we forget some of the lessons from the ICO days, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Gosh. Anyway, yeah, I just feel like there's still so much learning to do, and not just for newbies, but even for folks like us who have been around long enough, right? I'm still learning every single day, but I like that. Like,
Mhm.
this keeps me excited. Like, it means that I'll never be fully an expert in this stuff. I always have to stay on my toes and kind of keep working at it. But I'm into that. That's the kind of thing that keeps me deeply motivated.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited too. Um, one thing I wanted to bring up too is that you wrote a couple books as well.
Mhm.
You wanted
Yeah,
to introduce
yeah.
those?
Sure. So I mean, they're both of them are kind of very deeply Bitcoin related. One of them was called Reinventing Remittances with Bitcoin. That was 2017. And then 2 years later, so this one's a good one. It's called The Little Bitcoin Book. The way that we wrote this was that myself and my co-authors, there were 7 others, we all kind of flew in to San Francisco, and we holed up in a house for a week. And we kind of just slammed out this book in a week. Everyone got a chapter, and then kind of at the end of the writing cycle, we'd kind of give our chapter to someone else to kind of read and edit and stuff like that. So I wrote it with a couple of folks that are pretty well known in the industry: Jimmy Song, Alex Gladstein. It was deeply a Bitcoin maximalist book, I should say.
Mhm.
But I think that at the time my motivation was I wanted to have a book that I could give to my dad, that he could sit down over maybe 1 or 2 mornings and read over coffee. It's a very short book. It's only 100 pages or so, maybe 120. And so that he could go back to. It was like an evergreen kind of book, right? Where it just talks about, it talks not necessarily about any of the tech stuff, but it talks about the motivations for Bitcoin. So it's got some economic stuff in there. It's got a little bit of social and political stuff, and kind of talk. And it has like a really chunky question and answer portion at the end, where we try to address specific questions, that the most common questions that people tend to ask us. So that one became fairly popular. I know that like we're now in about 9 or 10 languages. You can buy it on Amazon, both as kind of a paperback, a hardcover, a Kindle, an audiobook. all in English. And then like there's a whole bunch of different languages also. Some of them were some of those language versions were like contributed by the community. So that was pretty cool. Like I know that we've got a bootleg one for Chinese consumption because we couldn't actually publish in China. So we had to, there's a bootleg version of, like, I love that it's a bootleg version. Like, that's so cool. That's like
Awesome.
I mean, that's the way to do it, right? If you want to do like a legit Bitcoin book in China, it better be bootleg, right? Like, it can't be official. So anyway, so yeah, so that that was a very amazing experience for me. I think that the biggest learning for me there was that, you know, I was with these incredibly passionate people who really believed in everything that Bitcoin stood for and all of that stuff. And I think that even within that group, there were still so many disagreements about what stuff was supposed to go into the book, right? And I was just, you know, I think maybe time boxing the whole thing to just a week's worth of work really worked in our favor, because it was like, okay, there's no way that we cannot leave this house without a finished manuscript. Therefore, we will have to set aside our differences, whatever they are, right? And some of us were more libertarian than others, just as a very basic example. We had to set aside all of our differences and just get it done. And I feel like that's the only way to, like, because I mean, not to brag or anything, but like this group of authors, they were 7 people who were very, very used to being the smartest people in a room, and to kind of put them into a room together was not a great recipe for agreement, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like yeah, it was that kind of situation, but it was great because like all of us kind of staked our credibility on the fact that we had kind of committed to this project. We told our respective companies that we were going to take a week off. We were going to fly to SF, and then we were going to do like 6 or 7 days writing a book together. So we had made this commitment, so we couldn't back down, because like, you know, otherwise it would be very, very embarrassing if we had to admit that, sorry, we couldn't do it because like it turns out we hated each other or whatever. Not that we did, but there were definitely a lot of disagreements. And it was quite amazing to kind of be in there. I wish that we had had the balls to turn it into somewhat of a reality show, but that would have
Oh,
taken
yeah.
so much production, and like it would just have been impossible to put it together. Not to mention that, you know, we were having very, very deeply private conversations about, you know, kind of where we thought the market was heading and stuff like that. We didn't really want to ever publicize. Like a lot of stuff didn't make it into the book because we thought that this is too contentious or whatever. So yeah, we were kind of like very we were trying to kind of look for that cross section that kind of satisfied all of us, and at the same time still fulfilled the mission of a book that we could give to our parents, that they could kind of, you know, struggle through. I mean, my dad read through it and he was still kind of struggling with some bits, but at least it was better than, you know, kind of a lot of the Bitcoin books at the time, which were published by like O'Reilly, right? So there's like
Yeah.
programming books and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like your other choices were not so great. So yeah, so that's kind of that was like that was the goal there. I thought we kind of hit it. And the fact that, you know, we still get inquiries for other languages, like other groups will kind of try to localize it for their own country. I think that's always a good sign, because it's one of those books that kind of simplified the conversation to, you know, a very short 100 pages. And yeah, so
I think that's
I'm yeah.
I
Go ahead.
think that's really important because it sounds like that's really helping people bridge that gap, because going from fiat to crypto, it's a paradigm shift, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
for
it,
sure.
it so a
Yeah.
lot of people, they need resources in order to kind of to shift their thinking and really get it. You know?
Yeah, yeah, but just a little one, right? Because like you don't want to overdo it with the big technical manual that kind of, you know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the white paper itself loses you by page 2 as soon as he starts talking about, you know, as soon as he starts showing the math formulas, most people check out.
Yeah.
Most people can get right past the abstract where he kind of talks about it in very broad terms. But like as soon as he kind of gets into the second page where he starts talking about how he does the consensus, yeah, a lot of people would just give up, right? And so we needed something a little bit easier. And like I said, it's kind of, you don't need to be authoritative with every single detail. You only need the stuff that really matters. And for a lot of people, it's the why, the question of why. The question of how is more important to people who are more technology oriented, or maybe, kind of work in the finance sector. But the question of why is what kind of, matters to most people. Why do I have to go to the trouble of learning about this stuff in the first place? And I
Well,
guess that was kind of a main question the book was trying to answer.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you're addressing kind of the mentality. I mean, and what kind of the same level people have to need to know in order to like use a checking account too. They don't need to
Right.
understand how the
Yeah.
bank does the transactions behind the scenes.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
It's just the
Yeah.
just the concepts and the fundamentals. Exactly.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we were trying to hit. I think we did a relatively good job, given that we did it in a week. So, I
I'll
mean,
have to pick that up.
yeah, please do. I mean, yeah, the audiobook is quite well read, I think. That was contributed by a community member also, and like a professional podcaster, or sorry, professional audiobook narrator, I think. But he was a, kind of deep Bitcoin fanatic, so
Mhm.
he did it for, a very little amount, and it was great. I really liked it.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, we've kind of talked about kind of went all over the place. Like, let's talk a little bit. If you have any thoughts about where we're going, in the near future with either
Yeah.
crypto or NFTs, or just any thoughts that you have.
Yeah. So I think that, so firstly, crypto story continues to be written, right? Like I think that, so the first thing that I'm sure of is it's never gonna die. I think that kind of the cat's out of the bag now. The possibilities of an alternative monetary system that has nothing to do with, you know, country, government, race, whatever, culture, kind of the possibilities of that is just too powerful. And I think what will happen over the next few years is that we'll start to just really challenge the question of whether or not we need 13,000 altcoins. I don't, I think that we'll continue to have lots and lots of altcoins, but I feel like the consolidation will eventually happen where, kind of, it's starting to become a little bit more apparent to me that, kind of Bitcoin and Ethereum are the ones that are kind of really sticking. But then, you know, again, the story is still being written, right? And this whole merge thing for Ethereum is a make or break moment for them, in the sense that, if it fails, I don't quite know how they'll handle it. I assume they've got to have some failure scenarios for this, but like I don't know. I don't know what will happen to kind of yeah, all that mind share that they've built up. So I think that, sorry, and this question is going to be a bit my answer is going to be a little rambly, just because I have a lot of thoughts on this. But I think that just in general, governments and central banks will continue to make the case for us of why crypto needs to exist. And I think it'll get, kind of their requirements and their mistakes will get worse and worse as time goes on. It's weird because, like, if you think about it, like what's actually happening, if you kind of zoom out, is that, as our fiat monetary systems have gotten worse, they've also gotten stricter with the way that they monitor what we do with them.
Oh,
So
that's a
like,
good point.
that's like, why isn't that counterintuitive? Like, you're just turning everyone off even further. If you were a product, right? If you were like any kind of private corporation with a product that they were trying to pitch, like if the product is getting shittier, you shouldn't make it harder for people to buy it. That's like the opposite way that you'd want to kind of do it, right? So yeah, they are going to continue making our case for us. And as more and more people kind of get into crypto, we're going to start to see like our first real scaling issues in all of these kind of layer twos, or whatever, like these high speed other blockchain projects that are high speed, whatever it is. We're like, we're not even at what are we at? We're like 5% of humanity supposedly has had some kind of crypto interaction, and that's not much. So once we start to get really to the point where, you know, it's like massive scale, it's going to be a completely new ball game. There's going to be so many more scams too, and there's going to be so much more news of these widespread hacks and all of that stuff, and it's going to be kind of a really tough next few years. But like, that's kind of how you, I think there's a certain amount of creative destruction that is necessary for kind of new paradigms to take hold. And yeah, so those years as we transition is going to be, you know, violently difficult for some people. So I hope we're all ready for it. But yeah, like I think me personally, like my main mission is to really just focus on making sure that people are properly informed and properly educated as they're kind of making these journeys for themselves. I kind of, like, me personally, I kind of gave up on working in the exchange business, just because the exchange business is basically as hard as working in a bank, but it pays slightly less here in the Philippines.
Really?
So, I mean, that might be, I might be talking on my butt with that one, by the way. I should say that it's definitely as hard as working in a bank, because not only do you have to work under the same kind of guidelines for, you know, on anti-money laundering and KYC and all of that stuff, but you also have to work against a customer stigma that, you know, some people just think that crypto is kind of a criminal's currency, right? So there's a lot more hurdles that you have to kind of overcome. But that being said, we are seeing a lot more progressive companies starting to embrace the crap out of this stuff, and I never thought it would actually happen. But like, you know, the two major telcos here in the Philippines, kind of our version of AT&T, I suppose, they both have these mobile apps with maybe 30 or 40 million users. And they are both including crypto trading as one of the features in those mobile apps. It's right there beside the bills payment button, for God's sake. So kind
That's
of,
incredible.
you know, yeah, I mean, so that it's interesting, right? To kind of see that, you know, that we're kind of at that point where some companies are really embracing it, other companies are not, and the other companies are really, really rejecting it. So this is what I'm talking about. This is going to be a violent upheaval. And you know, everyone needs to be prepared for the fact that it's not going to be orderly. It's going to be chaotic, and it's going to be unstructured. It's going to be messy as hell. But you know, honestly, I think all we can really do is try to prepare people as much as we can, because it's going to happen one way or the other, right? It does not seem like the monetary policies of our traditional of the tradfi world, I don't think it's working. And sooner or later,
It's a scam.
yeah, it is, it's unfortunate that it's a scam that has, you know, kind of like, it's been what, 50 years in the half a century in the making, more than that, I guess, if you count from the moment that the US dollar got pulled off of gold as a reserve currency. I guess it's a half century scam. But yeah, it's crazy that we continue to accept it wholeheartedly.
So the fact that we have these governments and these private central banks that are independently and privately owned, like
Yeah.
conduct, like in charge of national currencies without
Yeah.
any responsibility, direct responsibility to the citizenry or the government,
Yeah.
it's astounding. And the fact that it's
Yeah.
debt based, it's just a total scam.
Yeah.
I 100% agree, though, is that even if Bitcoin and Ethereum went down forever, like
Yeah.
the genie is out of the bottle. Like
Yeah.
there's always going to be self-sovereign cryptocurrency from now on.
Yeah. Yeah. The code is already there, right? The
Yeah,
code is already there. Even if Bitcoin itself went down, someone would just spin something back up, right?
yeah.
And eventually, you know, something will catch on again. So it's all a matter of like just making sure that the newcomers are properly ushered into this world, because so many of them, kind of their first touch are unfortunately like scams or Ponzi schemes because they can't tell the difference, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess the scams are kind of starting to lie low right now because of crypto winter, and I guess even scammers got to pay the bills. So kind of like they're forced to liquidate their own assets to keep alive. I don't know, but like during the bull markets, like kind of the BitConnects of the world just kind of come pouring out, right?
Yeah.
And the bull markets, by definition, are when the most number of newcomers sign up. So that's why you got to be ready. So yeah, so for me, it's like I'm just trying to like really shore up all of our educational resources and things like that, and make sure that we can properly handle the next cycle, because that one's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Like you, I don't have any doubt that I know some people are getting washed out and scared, but I know that we're just going through another lull, and we'll have another boom. I'm like you, I'm also a little bit nervous about the merge, but I
Yeah.
know that there's it is so it's the biggest like it's the biggest change of this type in crypto history that we'll have seen on the
Yes.
mainnet. So it's
Yes.
a very big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right. Because when Bitcoin tried to pull it off, it created another version of itself.
yeah,
Right, like, and that was kind of, that's the canonical way for blockchains to kind of work out a difference of this
mhm,
magnitude. They'll just kind of like split off.
yeah,
In Ethereum's case, they want to do it kind of on mainnet without losing any of their participants, and that's what makes it so ambitious. So we'll see. It's gonna be
yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be an exciting September, that's for sure. I mean, assuming
Yeah.
that they can actually do it in September. I know that that was like just it was like a tentative date, right? Like a target date or something.
I've heard, Lewis, I've heard this for like, I started checking, it was either in 2018 or 2019. I
Yep.
started when is Ethereum going proof of stake? And I
Yeah.
tried to look on all their web pages, and it was just like this
Yep.
rabbit hole of this rat's nest of web pages that never had anything. I've been
Yeah.
like since then, and it's always soon, but so
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's not September at this point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 And yeah, I get that too. I'm hoping that it happens this year for sure, because yeah, it's just like uh this is a lot of delays already, and I think that if Ethereum pulls this off, then you've got a pretty good kind of trigger for kind of maybe a thawing of crypto winter. But I don't know, and obviously like lots of things have happened, could still happen. But yeah, if we stick to the regular kind of expectations for crypto winter, then most people are expecting mid 2023 is kind of when it'll start to warm up again. But like I don't know either. Like I wish,
yeah,
if we had that crystal ball, I'm sure you and I would be a hell of a lot richer.
yeah, exactly. Well, one thing that makes me suspect we're in for quite a long crypto winter is just how low the gas fees are in Ethereum right now.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah, for sure. Like a dollar, right? Is kind of, I think that was the last one I paid
like
recently. Actually, you
like
think like a dollar is not actually that cheap. Yeah,
well, in terms of gas, I just a
yeah.
week or two ago it was
Hmm.
underneath 10 for gas
Hmm.
fees. So,
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh, okay, okay.
I hadn't seen that in a long time. So,
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. So because I handle a lot of treasury activities for our
uh-huh,
company. So like I've been doing it like every other day or so, of just like
mhm,
moving either Ethereum or stable coins or whatever. And like I think the
mhm,
lowest I saw was $1.50.
mhm,
So that's pretty good, right? I
yeah,
mean, like that's, at that point you're kind of back in the money range, so to speak.
yeah,
Where if you can say that, yes, I am definitely competing against the banking system
mhm,
with my $5,000 transaction that only costs $1.50 to send. That's a pretty good price. But like it could still get lower than that, I think. I mean, if
yeah,
you look at the competing chains with Binance, it's still in the tens of cents.
uh-huh.
Same thing with Solana.
Oh, is
So
it?
yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
Solana fees had gotten that high. So,
yeah. Oh, sorry. I mean, it's probably less than 10 cents, I should say. Sorry.
okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about BNB. But yes, so kind of it's still a different order of magnitude. But that being said, I think we're hoping that moving to proof of stake will have a really big effect on all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I kind of like you, I'm really positive about the future. I think we've got an incredible, there's a lot of stuff I'm sure that we're going to see that we can't even imagine right now, and I'm really curious to see what's going to come of it. But at the end of the day, I'm excited for what crypto can do for people and humanity in ways that government can't stop. So
Yeah, same here, same here.
well, cool. Well, I think we're at a good stopping point. So I'm going to go ahead and end it. I really appreciate you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much. Just a quick plug to anyone who wants to kind of follow what I'm doing over here in the Philippines. Hello Luis on Twitter, and then CryptoPop Art, all one word, also on Twitter. That's the art guild that I founded using a lot of Curio Cards funds, and we've got a 200 underprivileged Filipino artists that we're training to become NFT artists. And yeah, we're trying to work some of that miraculous chaos for them too.
Awesome. Yeah. Did you want to speak to that a little bit more, or you?
Oh no, that's
Okay.
it. I mean, over the
Okay.
next couple of months, we're gonna have a couple of art drops that we'll be talking about on Twitter. But
Okay.
at the moment, it's just kind of just like letting people know that we're out there, we're doing stuff, we're connecting these Filipino artists with income from the metaverse, so to speak. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Magic internet money, guys.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Well, thanks again, Louis. This has been really fun.
Thanks so much, man.